Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today you're checking out my brand new Stamina Sorcerer PvP build. This is updated for the Murkmire DLC, and this build is intense. We're using two-handers, so lots of burst potential here. We've also got sword and board on the back bar, which means we have lots of ultimate generation. And of course this is a heavy armor build, so our survivability is through the roof, talking close to 5k health recovery. So let's check it out. We'll go over the gear sets I've chosen, we'll go over some skill options, some champion point ideas, and more coming up next. Alright, so let's start by checking out the buffed stats on the build. Let me do some of this. Alright. So, 12k max magicka, 19k health. In PvP, that'll be like 23, 24k. 35k max stamina. Our recoveries are pretty good. Magicka recovery 800. Health recovery is actually the highest of all. 1600 and then 1500 stamina recovery. Stam recovery does look a little bit low, but keep in mind we are a stamina sorcerer, so we have a lot of other options for sustain. Our weapon damage is coming in at about 3200. That's without our back bar glyph though, so with that berserker glyph procced from the back bar, closer to maybe 3800 weapon damage. The weapon critical is a little bit low, and you can use a potion for this to get an extra 10%, so that's another possibility there. I'm just using tri potions for the build right now. Our buffed resistances, when we have our hurricane running, coming in at about 25,000 spell and physical resistance. And then 2200 crit resistance. I don't have the best traits quite yet on my gear, so that could definitely be improved as well. I have all my stats into max stamina, 64 points there. I am using the Steed Mundus for health recovery and movement speed. I really like this now in the Murkmire DLC. This did get a buff. I believe it used to be something like 5% movement speed. It's now 10%, which really works well with the Stamina Sorcerer type of playstyle. And then the extra health recovery is obviously nice. My food is going to be the Gold Artaeum Takeaway Broth. This just gives you extra flat stats and a nice bit of health recovery as well. You can use Dubious as well here, but you'll get the extra stats from Artaeum if you can afford it. Potions, I mentioned I'm using tripots. And then for my race, I am an Orc. I think Orc is probably the best race by far for a Stam Sorc build. But you can do other options as well. Red Guard, Imperial, whatever you like here. Alright, let's get into the sets next. This is where it definitely starts to get interesting. Starting with our first 5-piece set, I went with Shacklebreaker. Shacklebreaker is always a really good choice on Stam Sorc because you get the weapon damage, stamina recovery, max stamina, but you also get the magicka based stats, so you get extra max magicka and extra magicka recovery. We are using a fair bit of magicka abilities on this build, so that definitely helps a lot. I've crafted this in weapons. So I've got my two-hander front bar. This is a maul, which just gives extra physical penetration, so it's a nice option for a heavy armor build, especially since our weapon damage will be a bit lower than a medium armor build. I went with Nirntoned there for the trait, and then just a disease damage glyph. For our back bar, I'm using sword and board with an infused one-handed mace. It doesn't really matter what you pick here as long as it's infused, because you get the maximum weapon damage off that berserker enchant. I've got my two weapons front bar, and then I am using the heavy chest in reinforced. Just some extra defenses there with the reinforced trait. You could use impen as well. And then I've got legs, impen, and then boots, all in heavy. Next up, for our monster set, I'm using Heavy Troll King. So this is going to give us our 5 pieces of heavy armor. Heavy head and heavy shoulders. I've got a well-fitted and an impen trait. I've got one tri-enchant here. The rest of my enchants are stamina. So this is very good. We have health passives as an Orc. We have health passives as a Sorcerer. We have health passives from our potion. You get the idea. So this all goes into our health recovery when Troll King procs, getting us close to 4,500, 5,000 health recovery when our health gets low. It's really helpful on the build just to help you keep alive. I'd say another option here, if let's say you're running with a healer, maybe in Battlegrounds, and you don't need as much health, is you could slot Slimecraw here and get the extra 8% damage boost. That would be a nice option as well. But the way I'm running the build, you would need that in heavy as well, and I don't have that yet. So I'm just going with Troll King here for the extra survivability. And last but not least, for our last 5-piece set, I went with Deadwater's Guile. This is a new set from the Murkmire DLC. And let's go over the stats. So you get weapon damage, max health, max stamina. This is a medium armor set, by the way. And for the 5-piece, when an enemy dies within 2 seconds of being damaged by you, you gain 5 ultimate. Now I wanted to try this set, and I was thinking about what are the best classes to fit this on. I think it's Stam Sorc, and the reason why Stam Sorc is probably the best for this set is because you have Hurricane. So Hurricane is just a passive AoE damage over time, where basically you're touching every enemy around you in a radius. And basically if one of those enemies dies, you don't have to get the kill. But as long as they've been within the field of your Hurricane, which is actually pretty big, and it does get bigger over time, if they basically die after being touched by your Hurricane, you're going to get that 5 ultimate. So the ultimate gen on this build is very high based on this set. I think the overall stats are pretty good. I'm not so sure about the max health, but I do like the 5-piece bonus, and I just wanted to try something different. So you could obviously substitute some of the more classic sets here like Bone Pirate, Spriggans. You would get probably more damage overall, but your ultimate gen would be less. So it's a trade-off, and I like it. I just want to try something different. So do what you want here. But I am liking the results. So I'm using this on the medium waist, medium hands, so that gives us the best distribution of damage resistance, having medium waist and hands. And then I'm using the jewelry here. So I've got, for my enchantments, I've got 1 weapon damage, 1 reduced cost, which is really helpful on stamina. Heavy armor setups, definitely think about this, especially if you're playing in no CP and Battlegrounds. Got robust, and then I did throw in an infused here just to get more weapon damage. And I felt the stamina was high enough where I could do that. So 262 weapon damage on that piece. You could throw in more infused pieces as well. All right, let's jump into the skills next. Starting with our front bar, we've got Reverse Slice. This is just our AoE execute. Deals tons of damage, especially when enemies are getting really low health. It also has a low cost, which is very nice since we are a heavy armor setup. Next up is Streak, and I do like this on the front bar just to give us a little bit extra survivability and mobility. If you have too many people coming after you, you can streak away. And since we are using Shackle Breaker, you'll have enough magicka where you can pull out 2 or 3 of these at once if you need to. It also does that nice stun, so you can actually streak through people, stun them, and set up your burst combo on them. So very helpful to have Streak on your front bar. Next up is Bound Armaments, and this is a great skill for Stamina Sorcerer. It gives you just tons of stuff, tons of stats for that one skill slot. So the block mitigation we're never really going to use, but the max stamina 8% is huge, as well as the light attack damage. Not only that, the reason why you want this on your front bar is for the Daedric summoning passive called Daedric Protection. You can see this passive is really good for Stam Sorc. You get an extra 20% health and stamina recovery by having one of these abilities slotted. So I always try to get Bound Armaments on my front bar if I can, and it fits well here, I think. Now our main damage ability is going to be Dizzy Swing. This does tons of burst damage as well as a stun, so you can set up insane combos with this. I'll give you some hints on landing this when we talk about our back bar skills as well. Forward Momentum is next, and this is just essential, especially on a heavy armor build. This is going to help us deal with those snares. The healing doesn't seem like a lot, but it actually helps us consistently proc Troll King, which is another great reason to use this skill all the time. And then last up, of course, is Dawnbreaker of Smiting. You can see as a Stam Sorc, we get extra cost reduction of ultimate, so only 107 ultimate. This combined with our Sword and Board skill and with our Deadwater Guile is going to mean we can pump these out really, really quick. So this is definitely a must-have on your front bar. So switching to our back bar next, we've got Heroic Slash. This is great for a couple of reasons. You have the snare, the 60% snare for 4 seconds. If you lead off with this and a light attack, you'll get your Berserker Glyph to proc with a light attack, get your Heroic Slash snare going, bar swap right into your Dizzy Swing. It's going to help you land your Dizzy Swing much easier because you have that 4 seconds of snare on your target. And then as a Stam Sorc, we already have speed bonuses, so you can, kind of go around the backside, pop a Dizzy Swing, get that stun into a reverse slice or a Dawnbreaker, something like that. So I really like running this back bar just to help kind of set up those Dizzy Swings. But not only that, the Minor Maim is actually really good against those bursty kind of targets. Let's say like a Nightblade or a Stam Sorc, or a Stamina Templar, something like that. Reducing their damage by 15% for 12 seconds is very helpful, giving you time to set up your burst combo. And then obviously the Minor Heroism buff is going to go with our ultimate gen on this build, so you just get tons of things for this skill. So I really recommend it on your back bar. Next, let's talk about Dark Deal. Dark Deal is going to be your sustain. It's what makes a heavy armor Stamina Sorc really work. You don't need tons of recovery. As you saw, I only have about 1500 recovery for stamina, but my stamina is always really full because of this skill. It basically converts your Magicka pool into stamina and health. Now the skill did get changed a little bit in Murkmire. You can see you now have an additional stamina recovery over 20 seconds. What that means is basically they're trying to get you not to spam the skill as much, so it's going to be more effective to cast this one time than, let's say, like 3 times in a row. But if you really do need to cast it in a row, you can still do that and still get a lot of sustain and healing back from it. So this skill very necessary on the back bar for sure. Next up, we've got Resolving Vigor. This is just our heal over time. Definitely need this here. Crit Surge is next. This gives us Major Brutality, which is a little bit redundant with forward momentum, but we're really using it for the healing. So you get about 3200 health every time you get a critical strike, and that can happen every 1 second. So this does help a lot with healing and healing over time on the build. I would say this is flexible though, especially if you're running with a healer. You could put something else here. Next up is core to the Stamina Sorc, and that's Hurricane. You need to keep this buff up 100% of the time. This gives us extra movement speed, 10%, and then an additional Major Ward and Major Resolve buff, so keeping us nice and tanky when the skill is running. And like I mentioned in the gear sets, this is what's going to really help us proc that Deadwater set and gives us a ton of ultimate generation. For our ultimate here, you could do different things, and I have the Storm Atronach, and you might be wondering why I'm using this. I mentioned it earlier, the Daedric Summoning passive can be procced on any skill in the skill line, so I really wanted that health and stamina recovery on my back bar because it's kind of like our tanky and healing bar. So I really liked the extra health recovery, but I didn't have a slot for bound armament. So what I figured out I could do is just run this ultimate instead to give me that passive, which is really good on Stam Sorc. And then I do actually use this once in a while when I have the 170 ultimate. It does a nice AoE stun, and then drops your Atronach on the field of combat, so you can kind of go around it, you can kite beside it, underneath it. And it's actually kind of helpful if you have the ultimate for it. And it also lasts a long time, almost 30 seconds. Now, other options you could do here, you could obviously do the Sword and Board ultimate. That would make you a little bit more tanky. I'd also really recommend the Psijic Order ultimate. That'll give you the minor protection, the 8% damage resistance. If you have that skill line, then that would be a really good option here. But with any of those, you would probably want to slot bound armaments for that extra passive, so you might think about getting rid of Crit Surge in that case. But for me, I really like this setup, having the extra healing from Crit Surge, and then I get my passives from the Storm Atronach. Alright, and let's do a quick check of champion points. I'm playing this a lot in Battlegrounds lately, but Heavy Armor Stam Sorc is going to be really good in CP campaigns too, so here's what I would recommend if you want to do that. 37 into Warlord, 35 Sprinter, 56 Tenacity, 11 Arcanist, 64 into Mooncalf, 23 into healthy, just extra health recovery ain't bad. 9 into Shadow Ward, 34 into Tumbling. In the blue tree, we've got 19 into Blessed, 25 into Physical Weapon Expert, 72 Master Arms, 31 Shattering Blows, 9 into Thaumaturge, 28 Precise Strikes, 30 Piercing, 56 Mighty. You could do actually more into Thaumaturge, perhaps taking some of the Shattering Blows out, putting those into here. That'll help with your Hurricane damage. In the red tree, we've got 61 Ironclad, 44 into Resistant, 49 into Hardy and Elemental Defender, 34 Thick Skinned, and then 32 into Quick Recovery. Well, that just about wraps it up for the Stam Sorc PvP build. I hope you enjoyed it. If you made it this far, I just want to say another quick thank you. This will probably be my last build video for the year 2018. And basically it's viewers like you that inspire me to keep coming back to the channel and creating new content. So thanks again, and I'm definitely looking forward to creating more builds in the future on this channel. By the way, if you're an ESO player on Xbox NA, you can always support the channel and future build content by donating to me in-game, either in-game gold or crafting materials, anything that you like. I would really appreciate it. You can always send me in-game mail for that at Hack the Minotaur, and I'll be sure to give you credit for that in my next video. Thanks again, everybody.